The year was 1997. Anu Singh was a promising law student living in a Canberra townhouse with her loving boyfriend, Joe CInque, when she invited friends over for a dinner party, unlike any other, yet very different. Because, before their friends arrived, she issued them with a chilling warning. Tonight, someone will die. Anu Singh was born in Punjab, India on 3 September 1972 to parents Paddy and Surinder Singh, who were both doctors. The family immigrated from India to Sydney, Australia in 1973 when Anu was still a baby, and they settled in the suburb of Strathfield, where they went on to have another child, a son. Anu's early life was described as very normal, and her father stated that she was a happy-go-lucky child, albeit one with some attachment issues. Anu attended a Catholic high school in Newcastle, where she excelled academically, and she was also the Dux of Year 10 in 1988. Anu indicated that her parents had always expected her to become a successful lawyer and that she wasn't given all the same freedom that had been given to her brother when they were growing up. When she graduated high school in 1990, she moved to Canberra the following year to begin studying a double degree in economics and law at the Australian National University. Whilst at uni, she started rebelling and engaging in recreational substance usage. She also met a young man by the name of Simon, who became her first serious boyfriend in 1993. Although she wanted to live a life of freedom, Anu had missed her life in Sydney and frequently called home to her parents, and as a result of her homesickness, she deferred her studies for a year to return to her family in Sydney. Anu had gradually descended into an untreated mental illness in her early 20s, and it seemed to escalate around the year of 1995. This was also the year that she met and had an affair with a man called Joe CInque, while still together with her then long-term boyfriend Simon, after meeting him on a night out in Newcastle. Giuseppe CInque, lovingly known as Joe, was born on 11 June 1971 to Italian immigrant parents Maria and Nino CInque. He grew up in Newcastle, a couple of hours' drive north of Sydney, and had one younger brother named Anthony. The CInques were a very close-knit family and spent each night eating family dinner together, telling each other about their day. According to Joe's parents, he never got into any trouble and was always full of life. He was also very athletic and played just about every sport you could think of: tennis, cricket, soccer, and also took part in scouts. And with all of that going on, he also still performed excellent academically. It was said that he was very well liked in school by his teachers and got along with just about anyone that he met. After finishing high school, Joe wanted to study architecture, but changed his mind just before uni and pursued his degree in civil engineering. Joe graduated from university in November of 1994 when he was 23 years old. After graduation, his parents treated him with a graduation present of a trip around Europe. He traveled around Europe for 2 months, and in January of 1995, he found a job at the same civil engineering firm that his father worked at. It was at a club one night in early 1995 where Joe was hanging out with his friends that he met 22-year-old Anu. And Joe seemed to be immediately taken with her, and they soon started dating. Anu eventually moved back to Canberra to recommence her law degree, and the couple went long distance. This affair led to the very distressing breakup of Anu's relationship with her long-term boyfriend Simon. By 1996, things got pretty serious between Joe and Anu, with the two of them phoning each other between 15 and 20 times a day, and Joe travelling by car for 5 hours one way from Newcastle to Canberra every weekend to be with his girlfriend. And while Joe was, by all accounts, smitten by Anu, his increasingly frequent visits seemed to be spurred on by concern for his girlfriend's well-being, because Anu seemed to be having more and more health concerns. This relationship also led to tension between Joe and his family. Maria warned her son not to let Anu control him with her constant demands, and he pleaded with his mother not to make him choose between them, telling her, "I love you, Mom, but she needs me." His parents felt like she was very controlling of him. He started to be less outgoing. She spoke over him, and she also started calling during the family's standard set dinner time of 6 p.m. every night to ensure that she spoke to Joe at that time so that he could not have dinner with his family. Eventually, in September of 1996, Joe found a job in Canberra and made the move to live with Anu full-time. They moved into a townhouse together and even opened a joint bank account called Joe and Anu's Marriage Fund. By this time, Anu had also started weaning herself off from the drugs that she had now regularly taken, and it led to some serious withdrawal and depression. She also started obsessing over her physical appearance and spent hours in the gym telling friends that she'd rather be dead than fat, and started experimenting with various purging techniques like binge eating and then making herself throw up, fasting, and using multiple laxatives. And the obsession showed as she started getting thinner and thinner by the day. Her university attendance became sporadic, and on the rare occasion when she was seen by her peers, she appeared to be disheveled and poorly dressed, in contrast to her earlier generally immaculate and prideful dress sense. And while friends say the couple appeared happy at times, Singh's mental state continued to decline. She was unwell, suffering from welts on her skin, plagued by stomach issues, though doctors and specialists were unable to find the cause. She was experimenting with amphetamines, and perhaps as a result of this, combined with other mental issues, would frequently spiral into paranoia, believing that things were crawling under her skin. She also had dissociative symptoms, and once told her mother she felt as though her head was sitting on top of someone else's body. She was convinced that she had a muscle wasting disease, and at one point even convinced herself that she had AIDS. She then began telling friends that she was upset because she had AIDS, but that Joe didn't, and that it was unfair, and said that she planned to put some of her infected blood on his toothbrush so that she could infect him. Convinced that she was HIV positive, she went to go and get a test, but the results came back negative. She would get extremely angry by any suggestion that her problems had a psychological cause. Anu's parents knew that she was sick and possibly suicidal, and took her to doctors and a psychiatrist who recommended putting her on medication, but she refused because she said that they would make her fat. They also tried to have her hospitalized, but found it would take a tribunal decision to do so, because she was not a danger to herself or others, and they would need her permission to have her hospitalized. Through all of her issues, Joe was there supporting her, but soon it spiraled into blaming Joe for all her physical ailments, because he once told her about ipecac, a vomit-inducing drug, in a passing conversation. One day they were talking about models and why they were so skinny, and Joe said, "Oh, it's probably because they take ipecac to make themselves vomit." He never once suggested that Anu herself take it, but Anu was obsessed with being thin, and she started taking this syrup to lose weight. And from there on, she vehemently believed that it was due to the ipecac that she was as sick as she was and blamed Joe for unknowingly introducing her to it, never once telling him that she blamed him for it, but gladly telling anyone else that would listen. Her physical and mental health continued to decline, and in May of 1997, she told a friend that she wanted to kill a number of people, including Joe, her ex-boyfriend, and all of her doctors. When the friend asked her how she thought she'd get away with it, she said that she had studied law and psychiatric text and that it would be pretty easy to convince people that she was insane. Enter Madhavi Rao, who was a close friend of Anu's and also studying law at ANU. She was described as Anu's doormat and would basically just do anything that Anu had asked of her and followed Anu around like a puppy. By this point, Anu had told multiple people that she had wanted to end her life because of her health, and it was said that some even encouraged her to do so, Madhavi being one of them. And the two of them would regularly be in the university library researching suicide and assisted suicide methods. Madhavi never asked any questions, gave any advice, or tried to stop Anu from setting out with her plan. And what I didn't tell you yet was that Anu's plan had developed from not wanting to end only her life, but that she planned on also taking Joe with her, because she was not okay with the fact that Joe would get to go on living without her. Even at that point, knowing this plan, Madhavi wasn't like, whoa, maybe you need to think about what you are doing here. Or didn't think, maybe I need to tell someone about this? Nope. She just went along with anything that Anu had wanted. During August of 1997, Anu started selling all of her clothes for dirt cheap and started giving away her CDs for free to friends that wanted them. Her parents were really concerned by this when they found out, but she just told them that she wasn't going out as much anymore and wasn't wearing the clothes, so there was no point in keeping them. Still worried, they contacted the dean of ANU and wanted to find out whether Anu had been attending classes, but because she was an adult, they couldn't share the information with her parents. With all the worrying behavior, they decided to submit an application to have Anu submitted to a mental health facility without her permission. These applications take quite some time to evaluate, so they just had to sit around and wait for someone to get back to them. During the month of September, she also started telling more people of her plan to end her own life. We are talking about a whole bunch of people here that know this girl is not doing well mentally, and no one is trying to get her help. Going to her parents, telling anyone on campus, saying to her that maybe she needs to get help from a mental professional. Nothing whatsoever. We have one even helping her to do research on how to do it, and some telling her, hey, I know how you feel, and if you feel like you should do it, then that's what you should do. She even told some of them that she was planning on sedating Joe so that he couldn't stop her from ending her own life, and that she might even kill him and then kill herself. Like, what the hell? Now, this has gone to a point where she is saying that she also wants to kill someone else and not just herself. I mean, is a human life worth so little to these people? Not one person, law students mind you, thought maybe we should be telling someone that not only does she plan to take her own life, but she plans to take her boyfriend's life as well. This just completely blows my mind. After she finished her research, she decided that she would take her life by shooting herself, and asked a well-known drug user/dealer friend in her law class to help her get a gun for the purpose of ending her life. But it seems that he talked her out of doing it that way and suggested that she rather do it by overdosing on heroin. Again, not saying don't end your life, get help, instead saying rather do it this way. Mind blown. Intrigued by his suggestion, a few days later she and Madhavi went to this person's house to talk more about how this whole process would work. The person explained to them that dying would be quick and that once you inject the lethal amount, you would stop breathing within a few minutes and that it would be pretty painless. He told her that it would take around 50 to 100 Australian dollars worth of heroin to overdose if you were not a regular user. Feeling like she got the info she needed, she thanked him and told him that she would return to him to buy product when she was ready. About a week later, she called him up and told him that she wanted to buy half a gram of heroin and that he needed to get it ready for her as she was on her way. So she showed up to his house with Madhavi, paid him $250 and asked him to show them how to inject yourself as well as someone else. So he did just that. He injected himself, Anu and Madhavi and teach them how to inject someone else, not asking any questions. Later in the month of September, she went to see a university counselor and told them that Joe was abusing her mentally and physically, but told this counselor that she couldn't leave him as she was emotionally and financially dependent on him. She also told this counselor that Joe had told her that it was her fault that he was abusing her because he never hit another woman before her. Later on, she then said that this was not true. In early October, she called up her drug user/dealer friend again and told him that this time she wanted to purchase a full gram. When she went by to pick up the product, he again shot up her and Madhavi to show them how to inject themselves and someone else. When he asked Anu why she needed so much product, she replied, "Someone is coming with me." And when he probed for more info, she told him that he didn't need to know more, and he just left it there. Anu knew that Joe would not let her willingly inject him with her heroin, as he had never touched any drugs in his life, so she knew she would have to knock him out to be able to inject him. For this purpose, she decided that she would need rohypnol, better known as the date rape drug. Enter another classmate of theirs, also a known heroin user. She told them that if they were using it with heroin on a non-user, that they would only need one tablet to knock the person out, and she ended up selling them 15 pills in total. On 20 October 1997, Anu and Madhavi organized a dinner party. They invited people that were in classes with them, people that were just at uni, and people they didn't really know at all. And all of the people that were invited were told the purpose or were made aware of the purpose through someone else in attendance. This was a goodbye party. At the end of the party, Anu would be ending both her and Joe's lives. Everyone knew. Everyone except for Joe. So out of some sort of morbid curiosity, people came and wanted to see what would end up happening. But not one person thought to tell Joe of this plan, or to even hear his thoughts on this plan. And no one thought to intervene or seek help for Anu. Again, most of these people were law students, people that wanted to go into careers practicing law. The night went on, and Anu seemed to be very loving towards Joe throughout the night. She also seemed to be upbeat and was laughing and seemed to be having fun. So everyone thought this meant that Anu was not serious about her plan. She was known around campus for being very dramatic and seeking attention, and they just thought that it was just Anu being Anu. But still no one said anything, asked any questions, nothing of the sort. Madhavi was even proudly showing off her needle marks on her arms, telling people that Anu had been practicing on her so that she could inject herself and Joe when the time came. and reassured everyone as they were leaving that, "Don't worry guys, the plan was still going to happen, that as soon as they were all gone, that Anu was going to go through with it." Once all the dinner guests had left, Anu crushed up 3 rohypnol pills and put it in Joe's coffee, which knocked him out cold. She then went to fetch a pre-prepared heroin syringe to inject Joe with it. But because they had pre-prepared it, it was so concentrated, the heroin ended up thickening and became unusable, and she ended up not going through with the plan. So poor Joe woke up the next morning with the worst hangover he has ever had, with no idea that he had been drugged and almost killed by his own girlfriend. Anu was not going to give up, and she was not going to go silently into the night. She wanted everyone to know that she was not done with this plan of hers. This was going to happen. So, on Friday, October 24, 1997, she organized a second dinner party. This dinner party unfolded much along the same lines as the first. There were about 10 people in attendance, with several of the student guests being made aware by Anu herself that she was planning some sort of suicide pact with her boyfriend by the end of the night. But again, none of them tried to intervene or get any help of any sort. And she told them, "This time, it's really happening guys, trust me." Not only was Joe not aware of the one-sided suicide pact, but he was also not aware of this dinner party. He got home from work to a bunch of people at their house, and being who he was, he just went along with it. He didn't really know any of these people, but he had conversations with them about how well things were going at work and how happy he was about his new car that he had just bought. He even told them about a vacation that he had planned to Queensland, but none of them thought to mention, "Hey, so if you're in a suicide pact that's taking place tonight, why would you be planning a trip to Queensland then?" No, everyone just kept quiet and went about their night waiting and probably grimly hoping for things to unfold. Things went on much of the same with Madhavi, telling them that as soon as they left, that things were going to unfold. So as she did on Monday, after all the guests went home, Anu crushed up several rohypnol pills and slipped them into Joe's coffee again. But, different to the previous time, she now knew not to prepare the heroin way in advance. And this was when she injected Joe with the freshly prepared heroin for the first time on that day. Madhavi then left Joe and Anu's place around 6 a.m. on Saturday 25 October. And when she got back to her place, she told her roommate about what Anu did, and also explained that when she had left their place, that Joe was still alive. When the roommate asked why Anu was trying to kill Joe, Madhavi explained that Anu blamed Joe for her ailments, and she wanted to take him with her when she died. So, this was again another person that now knew that not only was Anu planning something, but she now executed that plan and still did nothing to intervene, try and stop it, or even call the police or anything of the sort. Between 6 and 9:30 a.m., one of the dinner party guests, Tanya, had informed one of the other dinner party guests, a guy named Leonard, that she was going to tell Joe that Anu had drugged him with rohypnol. This news then found its way back to Anu and sent her into a panic. So, she showed up with Madhavi to Leonard's house to try and give him some sort of explanation that would stop him and Tanya from telling anyone about what she did. She told him that it was true that she did in fact drug Joe with rohypnol, but it was just so that he would not stop her from ending her own life and nothing else. So, they ended up convincing Leonard to go with them to Tanya's place to convince her not to tell Joe. Anu told Tanya to please not tell Joe, that she would do so herself, and that she would not go through with the plan of ending her own life. So Tanya gave in and said that she would not tell anyone. On that same night, around 9:30 p.m., she contacted Leonard on the phone, and part of that call was recorded on his answering machine. She spoke to him about her worries on the lasting effects of Rohypnol, and told him that Joe had been sleeping for around 15 hours at that point. She said that he was now awake but had been very groggy and seemed to be out of it. At one point, Joe also got onto the phone to speak to Leonard, telling him that he was fine and that Anu was worried for nothing. Of course, not knowing that he had been drugged by her. After finishing the conversation with Leonard, she phoned Madhavi and asked her to come over. But once she arrived, they ended up getting into a fight because Anu started blaming Madhavi, saying that she was the reason that Joe was in the state that he was in, and that Madhavi was actually the one that drugged him, which was absolutely not true at all. Madhavi was not putting up with it and ended up leaving. And pretty much soon after she left, Anu again crushed up some Rohypnol tablets, put it into Joe's coffee, and injected him with more heroin. Very early the next morning, 26 October, Anu drove to Madhavi's place to wake her up and take her back to her and Joe's townhouse. Joe was in their bed, lying very still, breathing very slowly, and his skin was also turning blue. Anu and Madhavi left the house and drove to an ATM, where Madhavi drew $250 and gave it to Anu. But they ended up getting into another fight, and Madhavi walked home. Anu took the money that Madhavi had given her, went back to the drug dealer, and bought another $250 worth of heroin. Upon her return home, she called Madhavi relentlessly, and at first she didn't answer, but eventually she gave in and told Anu to come and pick her up. She returned to Anu and Joe's place, where Joe was still unconscious in bed. This was when Madhavi told her that she no longer wanted to be a part of this plan and left. Later that night, Madhavi spoke to Leonard and told him that Anu told her that when Joe had woken up from being drugged the previous night, he told her that he was going to leave her, which is when she ended up drugging him with the Rohypnol and heroin again. Around 12 p.m., Anu phoned the friend that had sold her the Rohypnol tablets and told her about everything that she had done to Joe. She told her that Joe's lips were slightly blue and that he was only taking a breath about every 10 seconds or so. So, she begged this person to come over and help her revive Joe. She, however, refused to be drafted into Anu's mess and told her to phone the paramedics. Anu replied that she didn't want to because she didn't want Joe to be mad at her, and it seemed too late for him anyways. The girl called Anu a selfish bitch, telling her that if she called the paramedics, that she might in fact have an angry boyfriend, but that if she didn't, that she would have committed murder. This seemed to be what finally put Anu into action, and at 12:10, she finally phoned the paramedics.
Yeah, could I get an ambulance, please?
Well, he's vomiting everywhere.
I have a person potentially overdosed on heroin.
Potentially overdosed.
Well, he's vomiting everywhere, black and stuff. Can the police just tell me is that a bad sign?
Well, it's not good if he's vomiting blood.
From this transcript that I have up here, you will see that she was also playing cat and mouse with the operator. At first, she gave him the incorrect address, and she also gave him the incorrect name, calling herself Olivia. Eventually, she provided the correct address, and the ambulance was able to be dispatched. Whilst she was waiting on the ambulance to arrive, she was advised to attempt mouth-to-mouth, but she said that she couldn't do anything because Joe's teeth were clenched closed. Once paramedics arrived, they found Joe unconscious in the bed and immediately tried to intubate him. There was a brown liquid that kept coming out from his mouth, and they struggled to get his airway clear. Anu kept pacing up and down, begging them to save him, and at one point even grabbed one of the paramedics by the arm and told her, "He had a lot last night." They tried everything they could, but sadly, it was too late. Joe couldn't be revived. Anu was taken to the police station to be questioned about what had happened, and there she told them what she had done and told them about the so-called suicide pact. But when she was asked why she didn't go through with killing herself, she couldn't give them an answer. One of the detectives noted that Anu seemed to be in hysterics and crying, but not once did she need a tissue to dry her tears. Maria said that on that night she had a strange feeling that something was wrong with Joe, and something told her to phone him. She tried the house several times, but her calls went unanswered, and on the last attempt, the call was answered by a police officer at Joe and Anu's house. At that exact same time, their doorbell rang, and it was the police.
Said, "Is about your son?" As soon as I said that, I started screaming, "Please, don't say anymore. She killed him, did she? She killed him." Straight away I knew she did kill him. I started screaming, "Please don't tell me it's not true. It can't be true." That's when I knew it. It was a nightmare. Hasn't stopped.
Joe's family had to go to the morgue to identify him, and sadly it proved too much for Maria, and she collapsed. An autopsy was performed on him, and his cause of death was ruled as asphyxia due to the overdose. During the autopsy, they found rohypnol and huge amounts of heroin in his system. They were able to determine that he was injected at least twice on the 26th of October, once around 3 a.m. in the morning and another time around 8 hours later. During the investigation, police found Joe's planner in the townhouse, and on Monday the 27th of October, there was a note written down that said, "Get ready to move," with an arrow pointing down to 6 p.m. saying, "Urgent." Police found this very suspicious because it was a note made for the day after that he was killed. They also noted that they found none of Joe's luggage and only a small amount of his personal belongings like clothing, etc. in the townhouse. To them, if you put all of this together, it seemed like Joe had planned on leaving Anu and moving out of their place on 27 October. Upon further investigation, they also found out about the knowledge of others regarding Anu's plan, and also found out that Madhavi might have also been involved in its execution. They then got a search warrant for Madhavi's place, and upon searching it, they found rohypnol, alcohol swabs, used syringe packets, pamphlets about arteries, and other drugs. In her room, they also found Anu's torn-up diary, and upon piecing it back together, they could see that Anu had been depressed for quite some time, and had been planning to kill herself and Joe for some time. But only one of them ended up dead. After her questioning and all the evidence that was found, Anu was immediately charged with Joe's murder. Madhavi was also arrested that same day. Anu and Madhavi first appeared in court on 28 October 1997. Anu was charged with murder and had told the court that she injected Joe with heroin only so that he would not interfere with her suicide attempt. Madhavi Rao was charged with conspiracy to commit murder but was released on a $100,000 bail on 5 November under the strict conditions to remain under her parents' supervision at all times. Anu had also applied for bail in December, with a psychiatrist presenting evidence of a personality disorder, but bail was not granted. Anu and Madhavi were originally tried together, But this trial was aborted on 11 November 1998, with the judge saying that one of the pieces of evidence was problematic as it was unclear as to which one of the two it was admissible against, and it would cause unjust bias against the other person. So, he then ruled for them to have separate trials. They both exercised their right to have a trial with a judge only and forego having a jury trial. Anu's trial began on 22 March 1999. She pled not guilty by reason of diminished responsibility. The defense argued that Anu had known that she had broken the law, but that she couldn't be held criminally liable because of her mental health at the time of Joe's death. They then presented evidence that Anu was mentally ill and had suffered from untreated borderline personality disorder and major depressive disorder and was not in her right mind. They stated that she had been in her own world of delusions, believing that she was going to die of a degenerative disorder. The prosecution called an expert witness to testify that Singh had appeared rational and assertive on the night she was arrested. They also argued that Anu had planned Joe's murder for months, told several people about it, and that she had acted cold-blooded about it. They also stated that if she had indeed been as depressed as presented by the defense, then she would have ended her own life as well, as she had stated she had wanted to do for so many months before ending Joe's. The prosecution pinpointed Anu as someone who embodied strong narcissistic traits. Several of the letters she wrote to her family and friends after her arrest was also presented as evidence in court, and in one of them she wrote, "I had the perfect life, attractive, money, law career, everything. Now, nothing because of my utter stupidity. I bet everyone is laughing at me now." They also presented her diary that they had pieced together to show that she had behaved rationally, was able to maintain relationships, and to show that she had been planning Joe's murder for months. They also argued the fact that Anu had injected him not only once but several times, stood by and watched him die over 36 hours, and that when she had eventually called for help, she gave them the wrong address and the wrong name, further delaying getting Joe help. Proved that she cared more about the consequences to herself than what happened with Joe. The trial concluded on 23 April 1999, with Anu being found not guilty of murder due to diminished responsibility, and she was rather found guilty of the lesser charge of manslaughter. On 24 June 1999, Anu was sentenced to 10 years imprisonment, with only 4 years of a non-parole period, inclusive of the time she had served since 1997, which meant that she would be eligible for parole in only 2 years. Joe's mother was deeply unhappy with the short sentence, rightfully so in my opinion, and lashed out in court, calling Anu a bitch, a demon, and the devil, and asked the judge, 4 years, is that all my son is worth? Only 4 years. But sadly, no amount of protesting from the CInques would change the sentence, and Anu started her sentence at the Silverwater Correctional Complex. Madhavi's trial started on 10 December 1999. She pled not guilty to all of the 4 charges against her. The defense argued that when she saw Joe unconscious in bed that morning, that she had told Anu that she was no longer taking part in the plan, and that was where her duty towards the care of Joe had ended. The judge stated during her trial, "Isn't it a rather chilling concept that one could take part in a plan to kill someone, go out and buy the drugs for the job, and then simply say, I am washing my hands of it now. I've got no responsibility. Let him die." He stated that it was undeniable that Madhavi was aware that Joe had been in danger, but that it didn't prove that she shared Anu's criminal intent or aided in Joe's death. So he felt like after aiding Anu in getting the heroin, getting the Rohypnol, organizing the parties, knowing about all of Anu's plans, paying for some of the drugs herself, knowing the state that Joe was in, and not getting him any help, she did nothing wrong. Madhavi was found not guilty of all charges and was free as a bird after having assisted Anu in killing Joe. Again, Joe's parents were very upset, rightfully so. Once the verdict was read, they were yelling and acting out and were escorted out of the court. Later that night, Nino collapsed and was rushed to hospital and was treated for a heart condition. Anu continued her sentence and worked in the prison library, tutoring other inmates. It was also the first time that she had agreed to undergo psychological and psychiatric treatment and was prescribed medication for several mental illnesses. She was eventually transferred to Emu Plains Correctional Facility, where she was granted day release to attend classes at the University of Sydney, where she received her master's in criminology, with her thesis being around the causes of female crime, including abuse, mental illness, and drug use. In October 2001, Anu was released on parole after serving only 2 years in prison after her sentencing. Whilst in remand, awaiting her trial, she met a new man, a former heroin addict and thief, and the two began writing each other letters, with him writing letters of support, and the two have since remained in a long-term relationship. In April 2004, after breaching her parole conditions by smoking marijuana, she was returned to prison, but was again released on 5 August 2004. In 2009, she received her doctorate in criminology from the University of Sydney after writing her thesis called Offending Women Toward a Greater Understanding of Female Criminality, that she also published as a condensed version into an ebook. Madhavi has since changed her name, gotten married, and moved to the US. Anu has appeared in several interviews since her release, and has issued apologies to the CInques, which they have shot down, saying that they don't want her apologies, and I don't blame them. During one of the interviews, Anu also said, "This is something that I'm going to have to live with for the rest of my life, and I do. I take full responsibility." When she was asked to explain why she killed him, she said that she couldn't explain why she killed him because there was no explanation except that it gave her some sort of purpose in her feeling pathetic at that point in her life. And she said, and I quote, "I remember telling someone it was like doing a university assignment." And that is where we will end our case for today. If you have gotten this far, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate your support so very much. Please leave your thoughts on the case in the comments down below. I love to read what you think. Please do remember to like and subscribe if you have not done so already. It's a free way that you can help me out. Until next time, stay safe out there, take care of yourself, and take care of each other. Bye!